Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to another riveting Magical Experiments podcast. Welcome, Sugarfoot. Welcome, TL Othos. I don't know if I said your name correct, but I tried. Glad to have you here. We're gonna do something special today. I'm gonna announce it a little bit later, so I ask you to be patient. And the reason why I'm gonna announce it a little later is because I want to give more people time to show up here. Um, But today I thought that I would talk about one of my books. And more importantly, I would talk about the philosophy and the approach behind that book. So, this is the book. It's called The Process of Magic, a guide to how magic works. And I wrote this book back in 2018. It was originally going to be a PDF course that people could get from me. And ultimately, I decided instead that I would rather make it into a book. And so again, I'll just share this. So this is the book. It's available as an audiobook, an ebook, and a paperback book. Welcome, Sheena. Glad to have you here. And I wrote this book because I was seeing a lot of advice being put out there about not needing to know how magic works. Just do magic. And I thought, that was actually one of the worst pieces of advice that I've ever seen put out there. And so I wrote this book as a way of really exploring how magic works and being able to explain the mechanics and the process of magic. Now, when most people think of magic, they think of magic as spells. And if you look at your average spell book, a spell book is basically a recipe book. It says to you, here's the recipe. Here's what you need to do. You need to get this candle. You need to get these herbs, this incense. You need to do these other things. And then it walks you through the specific steps to activate the spell. And, you know, I think that's great. A lot of people, that's what they want. But why I came up with this book is I came up with it as a way to explore like what's actually happening underneath the spell. Because what I found a lot of times is I would talk with people and they would say, well, I went and I did this spell and it didn't quite work out. And I didn't exactly know why. And I'd be like, well, why didn't it? Well, tell me a little bit about it. And they're like, well, I start doing the spell and I wouldn't actually understand why I was doing all the steps. I was like, aha, there is the issue. You don't have an understanding of the actual process that's occurring. So you're doing the spell, but you don't understand why you're doing the spell. You don't understand why you're doing the specific actions that you're doing. There is a fundamental piece that's missing. And it turns out that I think you do need to know how magic works. And it's really important. Now, I see that I have a few of you here, so I'm going to announce what the special, because I mentioned there's like going to be a special opportunity. The special is going to be that today you get an opportunity, one of you gets an opportunity to win a free ebook of the process of magic. So if you don't have this book, you actually get a chance to win that. The other thing I'm going to mention is that I'm also today running a little special. It's only for the next 24 hours, maybe 48. We'll make it 48 hours. 10% off my class, The Principles of Magic, which I'm pairing up with this because The Principles of Magic goes into detail about the actual underlying mechanics of magic. It's a great class. I've had it out for a while, and it's normally $97, but you're going to be able to save 10% on that. So that's going to apply regardless. But today, what I want in return for being able to win that free copy of my book, The Process of Magic, is I would love for you to share your best tip on like how magic works. Like what is it that you would share that would help somebody figure out like how magic actually works? So if you drop that into the chat, I will read them aloud and we'll talk about it. And then one of you will win an opportunity to, or a free ebook version, I'll contact you via DM afterwards, and I'll and arrange the details with you so that you can get that free copy, and I'll send to all of you the 10% off code, and that will be available for the next 48 hours on the principles of magic. Now I'm going to tell you some of my best tips while you're thinking about yours. I mean, the first thing I'm going to say is strip out needless complexity from magic. So in the process of magic, one of the things that I end up talking about a lot in this book is I talk about how to actually strip out the needless complexity. Because a lot of times what I find is that people will add needless complexity into their magical working. They'll do something they don't understand. And they'll do it because they'll be like, well, the spell book told me to do that. Or they'll do it a specific way. And it kind of brings me back to a story that I've heard. You may have heard of this. This is an apocryphal story. But it's a good example of like this person, they have a ham restaurant or they have a ham recipe. And what they do is they chop off the ends of the ham. And they do this every time they make the ham, even though the pan that they have it in is long enough for the entire ham. But they got this recipe. And so they've always been told, chop off the ends of the ham. So finally one day they talked to their grandma who they got this recipe from, and they asked, "Well, grandma, why do you have that in the recipe?" And she says, "Because back in the day, I had a pan I had a pan that was smaller, and I had to chop off the ends of the ham, but I don't have that anymore." Well, think about it. This person got this recipe for making ham, but it's a good example, right? And they chop off the ends of the ham because that's what it says, but it turns out they don't have to. This is a good example of needless complexity. It's also a good example of like why it's important to ask, like, why do we do things a certain way? So I'm sharing this story as an example of how you can also apply it to magical work. Like if you take a look at a spell, you can ask yourself, you may not be able to ask the person who wrote the spell, but you could ask yourself, well, why are they doing things that way? What were the limitations? What were the boundaries? What were things that they were doing or not doing? Now, Sheena has an example. Don't use other people's sigils or summoning magic if you don't fully understand it and trust the person. Yes, perfect case in point. I mean, there are some books out there where the people will be like, "Well, here's the summoning circle. Here's the symbol. Just use this to call on the spirits." And they don't really tell you like what's going on or why. Um, I think that is an example of something that's really unethical. It may be that the energy is getting drained away. So for the rest of you, share your tips out there. Sheena shared one, but we still have two other people here, so feel free to share them. Don't worry. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just genuinely love to encourage learning and growth and ideas. And while you're doing that, let me tell you what's in this book. Um, In this book, I do talk some about the principles of magic. Now, my principles of magic course actually goes into even more details, but I also talk about definitions of magic. I talk about working with spirits. I talk about astral projection and shielding and protection magic, how to work with ley lines. I even talk about the idea of working with the role of limitation in magic. And that's just scraping the surface. So I mention that because this is a book that I've been really proud of for a long time that really goes in and does this deep dive into how magic works. And I'm going to be doing some more lives like this. We're going to be talking about some of my other books because I don't feel like they necessarily always get the attention they deserve. And I want to, make sure y'all know about them. Because I've written a lot of books of magic. I've written probably about 30 at this point. I've actually written over 50 books total, believe it or not. But some of those are fiction and some of those are business books. And then like I have a book on mature masculinity, and then I have my magic books. And The Process of Magic is one of those foundational books. It's probably the most foundational book I have because it really goes into detail about like how magic works. So I'd love to hear from you like what and again, you get the opportunity to win a free ebook version of this book which will get delivered to you tonight. All I'm looking for is a tip from you. I can't use Sheena because Sheena and I are involved with each other and she co runs magical experiments. So she's disqualified automatically. But the other two of you are not. You have the opportunity to win a free book. Ah, really, really, when I think about magic as a process, I mean, it is kind of a question like, is magic really a process? Well, I think of magic as a process because it's got sequential steps. Like we want to get to a specific outcome. We're going to do this magical working. We're going to perform specific steps or actions in that magical working in order to achieve a specific outcome. So there's a process there. Now, one of the things that I think is really important, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, is I think it's really important that you have an understanding of the specific steps and that you're also able to kind of take a look at like what you're doing and ask yourself, well, if something isn't working here, what could I do to change that? Now, I have another book called How to Troubleshoot Your Magic where I go into this more, but the process of magic was written with the idea that also if you were practicing magic, you could come away with a solid understanding of your own process and be like, okay, here's this process, or here's a spell. I can deconstruct this spell, take it apart, and figure out what's working or what isn't working for me and why. And I can make improvements on it as a result. And that's really a huge part of, for me, what the process of magic is about. It's also about personalizing your magic. So it's about empowerment. Because I think a lot of times, we get these spell books and we're told we have to do them a certain way. But what we're not told is like how we can personalize them, how we can improve on them, what we could change or do differently. And I really want that for all of you. I want to share with all of you that it is possible to personalize your magic. I've personalized my magic over the years. It's one of the reasons why I do a lot of art magic is I didn't find a lot of the classical approaches to magic to be all that workable. I'm not like a huge fan of herbalism. And not that I have anything against it, but it's just like I'm not like somebody who's going to go and be like, okay, I got to get this particular herb, this particular herb, this particular herb, and do things this way. For some people, that works, and I totally respect it. But for me, I'm like, that's not workable. It's not something I want to put a ton of time into. But art magic, on the other hand, well, that is workable. That's something that I am very comfortable with and can get into, and I can create some really effective magical workings. And so the process of magic was written with the idea in mind that like you can personalize your magic as long as you understand the process. When you understand the basics, the fundamental dynamics of how something works, then you're going to get better results. You're going to achieve better outcomes. And when you achieve better outcomes, that's going to help you practice more magic. It's also going to help you get better results in general with your life because you'll start to take this framework and you'll apply it to other magical workings and other ways of thinking and being. Okay, well, we haven't gotten another tip here. And I'm going to wrap up here soon. So, like, this is your final opportunity. If you have a tip or an idea or something along those lines, and just give it your best shot. There's no worries here. I would love to see what you put out there on like what's your best tip for figuring out how magic works, or what's your best spell, or what's something else along those lines that would help you share your own process of magic with the world. All right. And while we're doing that, I'll go ahead and I will pop the link to the book into the chat here. I'm going to put the link to the paperback, but you can actually get the ebook if you want. And I'm also going to put the 10% off link for the Principles of Magic. Again, that's going to be available until Saturday, and then it's going to go going, 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 gone away. So take advantage of that if you wanna get the Principles of Magic. And otherwise, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I will also post this as a blog. So if you want to share your favorite or your best tip on the post there, you definitely can. That's another way you can share it. And I will get back to one of you and let you know. All right. Thank you all very much for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.